And focus? No? Maybe? Hold on. Let me get these. Let me put these a little bit. Maybe I should make it a little center. Okay. And cut. Hi Miss Roberts, this is my second video for my DIR project number 3. Today we are covering Phantom of the Opera chapters 6 through 10. We are around almost halfway through the book, and basically I'm just going to give a summarization of what's going on and then my thoughts and pieces on those. And like commentary and like annotations I've done. So again, we're around halfway through. These are my annotations so far. And a lot has happened in chapters 6 through 10. So basically chapter 5, when we left off, it was right before, oh, it was right after Christine's big performance. We already covered the dressing room scene where there's sort of this confrontation between her and Raoul to where she says she doesn't recognize him. But later we find out in chapter 6 that she does recognize him. She knows that they were basically like childhood friends, but she... so starting at chapter 6, it starts where she actually takes off time after her big performance, even though everybody loved her, and even though like she got such great reviews on her performance. People are like, maybe she's being modest, or maybe she's not, and then basically afterwards, Christine writes Raoul a little note that says, like, of course I recognize you, how about we meet up? And the Viscount, Raoul, he's super happy, he's elated, he just loves Christine. He's had an infatuation with Christine. And throughout the progression of chapter 6 through 10, we sort of see how strong his feelings are, because at first I thought it was just a bit of a childhood sweetheart rekindling thing, to where he's fond of her. That's what I thought. But basically throughout the progression, I think around chapter 9 or so, like 9 through 10 is when his feelings really start to show, and there's a bit of a negative side to his love for Christine, but we'll get to that later. But Viscount basically like goes to where Christine is to meet up, and there it's he also recounts like how they met, tells about Christine's father, about how he was a violinist, and about their time together. And then when they were children together, they basically had they liked listening to stories together, and there was this character, and I put down an orange tab because that's what I have labeled as a character. It's a very loose character, quote unquote, but it's the Angel of Music. And like it and this is another sort of role that Eric plays in this book. He's like this angel. He's the angel of music now. He's the Phantom of the Opera. He's the ghost. He's sort of this dark figure, and then later on he becomes a Red Plague, but that's later on. And Christine basically grows up hearing the story about the Angel of Music, and then when she asks her father about, oh, will I get a visit from the angel, he says, when I go to heaven, I will send the angel to you. And so her father passes. She basically sort of loses her talent for singing, like her enthusiasm for it, because her father's passed, and she's just doing well enough to sort of get into like the music academies, and she's taken in by, I believe, this professor, and she goes up with him. She makes it to the eventually makes it to the opera, but she has very minor roles. She's not a very significant singer. She's not a very significant character in the opera as of like since then. But at the place where Christine is staying, no, Raoul confronts Christine and is like sort of wants to know where they stand with each other, like why did you claim not to recognize me, stuff like that. And then Christine sort of wants to open up, or she doesn't want to open up to Raoul because she doesn't know what he knows, but Raoul says that he heard a male's voice from her dressing room the night that he went to confront her, and she said that she didn't recognize him. She said she heard a male's voice, basically, and he recounts like word for like verbatim of what he said. He's like, he said, you need to love me, and then you said, I've already given you all of me, stuff like that. And then Christine she's taken aback, and here's what I marked as in my Supernatural Eric tab, because she was like, I didn't know anybody else could hear his voice, but now that I know, we know that he's like real. And then because Christine knows that Raoul can hear her quote-unquote angel's voice, she tells Raoul that she believes she's been visited by the angel of music and that he's teaching her to be a better singer. And Raoul basically laughs. Christine she thinks she's being ridiculed, and Raoul thinks somebody's playing a joke on her, and so she storms off. And there's a lot of storming off in this book. Lots of walking away from each other without proper communication. A little later, the narrator of Phantom of the Opera, which it's so unclear to know who the narrator is, because there's investigators, there's transcriptions of interviews and stuff in here, and the narrator even gives his thoughts and opinions about certain things, but he's never really introduced. Like we can tell that he's a character in the story, but he's not involved as much as the other characters. So my standing theory is that he's an investigator. And so Christine goes to her father's gravesite when the midnight strikes 12. She doesn't notice Raoul. Raoul sneaks up on her. She sings Lazarus, basically in a super angelic, beautiful voice, and Raoul is enchanted. And then when it's over, he sees like the face of the skull of the phantom skull in the graveyard, and he blacks out and he wakes up back at the end. And that's the end of chapter 6. Chapter 7 is very short. Chapter 7 is just going back to the two new managers of the Phantom of the Opera, Richard and Moncharmin, something like that. They were basically the ones that thought the whole Phantom was just like a shtick. Like, they don't believe he exists. They think this is a long-running prank from either the old managers, or it was just like this big old conspiracy. And so in chapter 7, they basically recount how they wanted to go to the box to confront the Phantom, and they sort of have, and they go, they see this figure, but they see two different figures. They see, one of them sees the figure of an old woman, and they predict it's Madame Gurry, who is the attendant of box 5. And they basically have a little scare, but they're like, oh, it's obviously a prank. It's obviously some kind of hoax. And so they're newly, set in their resolution that this Phantom does not exist. And then the next performance, Faust, on Saturday, they are going to sit in box 5 and they're going to watch it. And that's end of chapter 7. It was just very short. Chapter 8, beginning, we get a note from the Phantom. He is not happy. All his requirements of like his allowance, of like his box be reserved, of keeping Madame Gurry as his attendant because they have sort of this rapport, and to have Christine perform because Carletta will be predisposed. Those are his requirements. He's making them very clear. He says that should any of these not be met, the performance will be cursed. And Richard and Moncharmin, they don't give very much thought to it. Richard, even right after the note, he says, well, I'm thoroughly sick and tired of him, Richard said. And obviously they don't take this very seriously. And there's very briefly a moment with a horse, but I'm not sure what that moment's about. But, around the same time, one of the lead performance of the opera, her name is Carlotta. And, I marked her as a new character, even though she was previously mentioned, because this is more in depth of what her personality is like. And so basically she finds a note from the Phantom in his, but she doesn't know it's from the Phantom. It's in his like childlike red ink script, and it basically says like, be warned, if you're gonna sing tonight, something bad is gonna happen to you. And Carlotta thinks this is a load of crap. She thinks that this is a conspiracy to get Christine to perform, or Christine's up to this somehow to try to scare her into not performing, and she's not having any of it. And going further into her character, just briefly, here a description in the book. It says, Carlotta possessed neither heart nor soul. She was merely an instrument. A wonderful instrument, but an instrument nevertheless. Her repertoire included everything that might befit an ambitious diva, be it the work of German, Italian, or French masters. And basically she has the range, she has the charisma of a performer, she can hit any note. She's basically like the shining star of the opera. She's well known, she has a group of friends, she has like a posse, she has a gathering of people, of admirers, of friends, and basically she goes to tell this group of friends that Christine's up to something, keep your eyes out. And basically right before performance there's another note. It's another, in the same writing of the Phantom, it's like, you've caught a cold. You can't perform. And Carlotta pays it no mind again. She's really flippant about this. And she's got the same attitude as Richard and Moncharmin. And so going back to Richard and Moncharmin, they're in the box, they're watching the performance. They're like, oh, has the ghost appeared yet? No. And it's said that the ghost usually appears around the end of the first act, but the first act passes, no accident happened. And they're sort of mocking, they're keeping the Phantom at the back of his mind, keeping his warning at the back of their mind, but they're it's more of a joke at this point between them. And so he's like, oh, is something bad gonna happen? And they're like, I doubt it. And so going into the performance, we see Carlotta and Christine on stage, and then Christine, given her earlier performance where she was so astounding, she seems almost bland in this one. Like Carlotta was, she was of course in the spotlight. She has the main role, and then Christine has, I think, a male's role, or she's dressed as a male. It was mentioned she was dressed as a male in this. And we get very briefly in the audience when Christine is singing of Raoul, the Viscount, and his brother, the Count, sort of how they feel about Christine, or very specifically how the Count feels about Philippe, I believe is his name, about how he feels about Christine, because Raoul is crying, starts crying with Christine, starts singing, and the Count, he does not like Christine at all. He thinks his brother should not pay her any mind, especially because she's sort of these, I wouldn't say lowly, but sort of, she's just a singer in opera. They are sort of, they're almost like nobility, you know. They have a title and everything, and so, which is ironic, because I'm pretty sure Philippe, not 2 chapters ago, was having a bit of like a fling with Sorelli, but that was another thing. And he doesn't like that Christine is causing Raoul this much grief, and that he's crying at her performance. Getting further and deeper into the performance, the ghost leaves a box of sweets under the, when the 2 managers go and investigate, when they hear that Christine is plotting against Carlotta or something. They go and investigate, but then when they come back, they find a box of sweets in under the seat. And I like to think this box of sweets was like this sort of forewarning. It was like, you can have this box of sweets for what's to come. And so basically afterwards, Christine sort of has her big Carlotta has her big moment. She's going to sing. She's about to bring the audience to their knees in amazement, and her voice cracks. And the way this this narration is written or portrayed, I almost thought for a second that she actually had a toad like come out of her throat. But no, what I've gathered is that her voice cracked, and her voice never cracks. Literally, it says, like, I think in one of the later parts, if I could find it, probably not. It's like if it had been any other singer of the opera, they would have been ridiculed and booed by the audience. But because it was Carlotta, the audience is stunned. The audience is flabbergasted. They have never seen something like this happen to Carlotta, the jewel of the opera. And the crowd is just open mouth gaping, and Richard and Moncharmin, they're at their box. They're also like speechless. Basically, this is sort of an omen, a bad omen, because Carlotta is such a star singer, and so Richard and Moncharmin, they feel this sense of foreboding or impending doom coming up, and basically they freeze in their box, and they can feel the presence of the phantom, the ghost. And I also marked this page with another supernatural Eric characteristic tab, to where his presence is like filling up the box. And basically they hear this disembodied voice saying, quote, "Her singing tonight is enough to bring down the chandelier." And true to the phantom's words, chandelier falls, and the person who Richard brought in to be Madame Gurie's replacement is killed. We never got her name. She was just known as the concierge or something like that. She is killed. And that is the end of chapter 8. Chapter 9, after the tragic evening ends, Carlotta falls ill. Christine, she vanishes, basically, or she disappears, I believe for around 2 weeks, or it says like 2 weeks later she was still nowhere to be seen. And so Raoul is desperate to reach her. He still wants to have this sort of connection with Christine, even though it seems like she does not want to return his feelings, or there's something restricting her from reaching out to him. And so Raoul decides to go to Madame Valerius, which is the wife of the man that took Christine and her father in. Raoul goes to where Christine is staying, and Christine is ill, and so Madame Valerius is this character who even Raoul notes is really naive, because she sort of wholeheartedly believes the figure of the angel of death. And the reason why the readers know that is because when when Raoul asks sort of how Christine feels about her, Valerius says like, oh, she feels adoration towards you, or and Raoul is like, how do you know? And she says, Christine talks about you all the time. But Raoul is like, then why, well, I confess my love to her, why won't she marry me? And Valerius sort of brushes it off. She says, well, of course not. She can't marry. And the reason she says is because the angel of music forbids marriage. And the way that Valerius talks about the angel of music. She talks about her like a person because she's like, oh, Christine's been having lessons with him for 3 months. But she also talks about him like just sort of this mythical creature, like an actual angel, because when Raoul asks, where is the angel, she says that he resides in heaven. And so there's Valerius is sort of these whimsical, or she thinks that the angel is actually like this mythical spirit, even though Raoul's religious and he doesn't believe in the supernatural, but he's religious, and so even he thinks this is sort of a little too far. And basically she says that the angel forbids Christine to marry, and because if she does, then he will leave her. And they talk about the logistics of the meeting. Valerius was like, obviously they couldn't meet at the house. They were probably meeting at the opera to have lessons together. Around 8 in the morning, there's nobody in the opera house. And this is the start of where we see very strong emotions from Raoul. We start seeing like boiling jealousy. We see some rage because he's upset, because he's starting to think that Christine is cheating on him, even though they're not in a relationship, is basically in a relationship with another man. And quote, it says here, to think that he had believed her in her innocence and her purity. And so this conceived knowledge that he has of this angelic Christine is sort of becoming, it's sort of unraveling in the more he finds out about her relationship with the angel of music. And he sort of becomes upset at her, and he becomes sort of bitter towards her. But then he's like, but I love her. And so he's back and forth a lot, especially throughout chapters 9 and 10. And he's definitely sort of obsessed, because he goes home, he's in a rage. By the time he gets home, he just wants to bury his face in a pillow and sob. And when he gets there, his brother, the Count, is like, I saw Christine, and Viscount Raoul, he's like, oh, I have to catch her in the act, or something. And he basically follows to where Christine is. She's in this carriage. He calls her name. She does not answer. They ride away. And chapter 9 ends with a note from Christine. And they're sending each other very mixed messages at this point. But it's a note from Christine, and it says, basically, we're a white domino, which I really don't know what that is, so I'll have to look that up. Wear a white domino, hide your face, come to sort of this masquerade ball at the opera. And that's how chapter 9 ends. Chapter 10 is the masked ball. In chapter 10, basically, so Christine leaves a note for Raoul, and tells him to dress in white, to cover your face, and to show up at the masquerade ball that's going to be at the opera house. And Raoul, he's sort of a sucker for Christine. He realizes that maybe he doesn't hate her, or he doesn't hate her enough to not see her again, and so he's willing to forgive her. And so he's going to go to the masquerade, and there he meets Christine, who's dressed in black. Her face is also covered, and as Christine is leading him away, a big foreboding figure, he is a Red Death. He literally has the words embroidered on his cloak, beware, I am the Red Death. And as she's leading him away, Raoul sees that when a man tries to reach out to touch the figure in red, the skull that he saw in the graveyard where Christine's father is buried, he sees the same skull on the cloaked figure. And so Raoul sort of feels this new surge of rage. He wants I wouldn't say revenge, but sort of to lash out at the figure. And Christine wants to lead him. Christine's trying to lead him away. And Raoul and Christine, I have notes right here. They go and find an empty box, and then the Red Death figure walks by again. Raoul wants to attack him, but Christine is like, no, don't. And so when they stop, Christine basically confesses his love for her, or confesses her love for him. Sorry. And even though the readers think this is probably the moment that Raoul was waiting for, he's sort of meeting it with contempt. He's like, how can you say that after everything? He's just shocked by her admission. And so he thinks that she must be lying to him, because, I mean, they've met on several occasions where she could have confessed his love, and they could have probably ran away by now, I don't know. But she chose this moment to tell him. And so he lashes out at her, calls her a liar. Christine says, maybe one day I'll forgive you for it. And he begins to cry. She tells Raoul that she will never sing again. Blah, blah, blah. We move on. And when Christine walks away, he tells Raoul not to follow her. And so a little bit later in the chapter, Raoul's looking for Christine or the red figure of death. I don't know, he just wants to lash out at somebody. But he sees Christine heading back to her dressing room, and so she hides in her closet. And there, he sort of sees Christine in despair, but when he's waiting to hear like his name come out of her mouth, what she says is, poor Eric. And Raoul is like, who the heck is Eric? What is going on? And basically Christine starts writing or composing a letter, and she's being very calm about it. And then near the end of the chapter, we hear in the book, it says, a voice, a soft, enchanting voice coming into the room, and it's getting nearer and nearer. And Christine like stands, she's in like a trance-like state, and she says, here I am, Eric, I am ready, but you're late, my friend. And then the disembodied voice continues singing, and then as Christine approaches the mirror, I think she like walks into the mirror, and here there's a little bit of like magic realism or like a supernatural element to where basically she disappears, readers guess, into the mirror, but at the same time Raoul sees like dozens of figures of Christine in the room before it all just sort of disappears and Christine is gone with them. And when Raoul rushes in, he doesn't understand what just happened. And he's just overwhelmed, and the end of the chapter ends with sort of where is she gone? How does my heart feel about this? Will she return? And the last question on his mind is, who is Eric? And so chapter 6 through 10, to me, Christine is not a very dynamic character, even though she's like the main female protagonist. I just haven't seen a lot from her, but Raoul seems to have a lot of facets or certain like very strong emotions. He's definitely very driven by his emotions. He's cried like 3 times already throughout the span of through the span of 6 to 10, chapter 6 through 10. And even with in like reading the book, I didn't expect the Phantom of the Opera to have such a presence. I expected a lot of sort of foreboding elements, sort of this conspiracy, this tale of a ghost in the Phantom, but I didn't realize she just sort of wandered out and about, especially in this masquerade, and I was actually pretty surprised. But Christine sort of is being tagged along by the Phantom. She and as expected of somebody who taught her to sort of be super talented, she's pretty docile towards the figure of Eric, and the readers can even tell that she sympathizes with Eric, even though he's the one that sort of done all these bad things and sort of cursed the performance and stuff like that. When she says poor Eric, with like true despair on her face, the readers can sort of predict it's not love or even admiration to him as the angel of music. She sort of feels this pity towards him, and where Raoul stands with that is he's extremely jealous. He just wants Christine to sort of look at him and confess his love, but even when she did confess his love, they were sort of at this impasse to where he was like, why didn't you say this earlier? Why do you keep lying to me? Christine handles it very calmly, if anything. She says, I'll forgive you eventually. And then, obviously something is, like, something imminent, something is amiss, because Christine says, I will never sing again. And so maybe she has to run away with the phantom. Maybe she is going somewhere alone. Maybe something is happening, and that is what I will find out. And in the next video, video 3, I think I am reading chapters 11 through 15. And then video 4 is chapters 16 through 17, along with the epilogue. And so, that's it. Forgive this setup. My room is very small, and there's only certain places where it's like there's enough space to set up a camera far enough from my face. But that's it for this video. I will have a lot of fun editing it.